Hey everyone, it's Alan over at Cobblers Plus, and in today's video, we're going to be working on a pair of ladies 1,000 miles. So come join us and check out what we're doing for them today. So thank you for joining us, and like I mentioned, we're going to be working on these ladies 1,000 miles, which are very cool looking. I like them. What do you think? Pretty cool looking pair. But we're doing something a little interesting to them, actually. The person who sent these in had requested getting the Vibram Mini Ripple sole on them with as low profile of a heel as we can get on there. Now, the heel, obviously, we're not going to do one that's a 90-degree angle like it is currently on here. We would have to do a wedge so that it's a little less noticeable and is as low as possible without altering the overall shape, significantly. But it looks like somebody has done a little bit of work on these before, which is interesting, I can say. They've got some Vibram fine line protective soles on them, and that's what it looks like right there. So whoever did them, I don't know if it's the owner of the shoes. I didn't ask them, but it's interesting. I don't want to say too much about it if the owner did it on them. But yeah, I mean, it's not quite glued down. Well, it's glued down, but the sole was never sanded out properly and glued. So I have a hunch the owner of the shoes may have had her hand in doing something for that. But still, if she was the one that did it, great work actually from doing it from home. But if somebody professionally did them, or says that they're professional apparently and we're the ones that did it, yikes. So yeah, we got Marcus laughing at that because everyone saw that. Everyone's like, whoa. But first things first, we got to get that protective sole kind of at least out of the way. And then we're going to be taking off the heel on there. We got to take off the heel base, the sole, and then finally we can start pulling the stitches and everything and removing the filler inside. But what I'm going to do is readjust the camera angle and just kind of fast forward through it because I talk way too much and it's a bit of a longer process tearing down. And so if you just want to sit back and relax with a cup of tea, coffee, something a little bit stronger, or like in my case, I enjoy a nice cigar, and just watch with the music in the background. Let me know what you think of the music down below, and yeah, just enjoy. everyone, so at this point, as you can tell, we got the sole off. The cork all came out at one time, well, except for one little tiny piece that's over there and everything. So these came apart very well and everything. Only downside is that while I was pulling off the sole, 2 nail heads kind of broke through right there, which it happens, you know. But there are certain areas that we're not going to be running nails into anyways, which are right here, which actually makes me wonder if these were actually re-healed at some point, because that is a Vibram heel on there, and you can see these weird holes here, and that's actually the clinch nails being pushed in on the inside just a little bit too far and stuff. And I don't know what the whole deal is behind that, but that ended up being the case, and no clue. But at this point I can now take out the threads. Usually I like taking the the boot to the stitch puller on our machine, but this has a lighter colored welt on it and has a transition of different color upper too, and because the thread puller, or it spins and it has these little nubs on it, and basically it just pulls the thread out very easily and efficiently. But when you got a transition between like a light color like that and then you've got an even lighter color welt, sometimes that thread puller can potentially darken the leather just from the friction, and we don't want that to happen. So I have to go through by hand with a little plucker like that, technically an awl, but ended up getting bent to the perfect angle like that, and has now become a plucker. So it's perfect. And yes, I got threads flying all over the place and landing on the floor, but that's a cobbler shop. We got threads, nails, and all sorts of stuff everywhere. But it's always important to take out the stitches and make sure they're out of the way. There are still to this day some cobblers that actually don't pull the old stitches, and it's kind of a shame because one, the work looks a little sloppy, and two, it's not good for the welt itself, because you got the old thread and then the new thread, and that kind of creates a larger hole and stretches everything out. So we don't want that kind of stuff to happen. This is one of the things I like about the Wolverine 1000 miles when it comes to recrafting them. They're like butter for me to work with. I don't know what it is. There's just so much ease. I mean, even the cork coming out. God, did you see that? It came out beautifully. Just completely off. Everything just, it's supposed to. It's as if it's supposed to be, you know, recraftable. And it is. It really is. So the only bad part, I guess, is this very last thread right here that goes through the little rand here, so it's a bit of a pain sometimes, but that's about it. So at this point I'm just going to take out the threads, do the same thing to the other boot, and we'll continue on. So we'll see you back. Alright everyone, so now we're going to go ahead and fill in the cork. For anyone that's wondering, these do have a shank, but it's embedded inside this footbed here, so there was no shank to remove and check or anything like that. I did check, however. Everything on this shank is intact. It's a little sticky right now, obviously, from the glue. But the cork pieces, I got these new ones in, which I'm excited about because they're very thick. I mean, look how thick that is. So, perfect timing for these boots here, because sometimes the cavity in here on a Goodyear welted boot or shoe tends to be a little on the deeper side. Not always, but sometimes. And perfect to have these new ones in. Now obviously these are pre-cuts, predetermined density, so there's never that issue with, you know, one spot might have too much cork, one spot might not have enough. But alright everyone, so we're back here again. We've got everything filled in with the cork all nicely. Guess it wasn't on camera there completely. And now we're going to put on the midsole. I'm using a composite for this. Composite just seems to bind and hold up a little bit better with other synthetic materials like the rubber sole that we're going to be putting on. So definitely definitely a good route to take, in other words. Oh, probably should have changed out my last before trying to put that thing on there. Hammer it out. Beautiful. Now I can take this over to the welt press and everything and press that out. All these edges, see there's just that little tiny air pocket right there, in other words, and that's a weak point, and even right there, unless I press it out on that welt press. Now, as you can tell, there's a lot left over from this one. These midsoles do come pre-cut. They also come in large sheets, but the large sheets, they end up taking up more time than we'd prefer, in other words. Plus, these little sections we actually use for a number of things. Sometimes if we need to punch a hole in a belt or something, we use this as a good backing and stuff to prevent the hole punch from hitting metal or wood or whatever we're hammering on, basically. And so they really come in handy, these pieces, actually. So I prefer it that way. But anyways, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and press everything out and then let it sit and cure overnight. And then tomorrow morning I can actually go ahead and get ready to stitch and continue on. Now, I can take this to the stitcher very quickly, technically, but long term I'm thinking about it for even our equipment too. The glue is still not set to it's not set to a certain point where I'd want my machine running needles and thread through it. Some areas, maybe even the thread might pull out some glue along with it, and it just might look like an eyesore or something. I don't want that on these shoes, because women's 1,000-mile boots, that's pretty awesome. So I'm gonna go ahead and press those out while they're still warm, and I'll be back in just a second to let you see what the cutting is like. It's one of my favorite parts, so I'll be back in just a second. All right, now I can show it. So it's one of my favorite parts. I don't know why, but you can go ahead and listen to the sound. I'll stop talking here at this point. There we go. So that piece I'm going to set aside for now. I'm going to put it into this little bin that we have. I don't know if my camera catches the sound, but there's like this really light sound of cutting through it, and to me it's a little relaxing. I don't know if the camera caught it, but maybe one of these days I'll have a Yeti mic and I'll actually catch the sound and everything. But that's my favorite part. I don't know why, is cutting it. It just so smooth, especially while these things are still semi-warm. But I'm going to set this one aside to dry and cure completely overnight, and we'll be back. For me, it's going to be tomorrow. For you guys, a few seconds. And yes, I do have blue on my hand. Just touched myself with the dauber and got blue on there, but it ain't coming off. As you can tell, it's not coming off. It's going to take a little while for me to be washing my hands continuously before it actually comes off. And I got this piece here. I think I might actually keep it here because it's perfect for gluing on without actually getting my actual workbench too sloppy and dirty. So anyways, I'll be back in a little bit and go from there. All right, everyone, so we're back here again with these. We've got everything kind of just a little more roughed up, trimmed up the edges just a little bit closer while I was at it. And so at this point, we're going to go ahead and stitch these soles. Well, before I stitch them, I should have marked it, because these don't go 360. That means that they don't go stitched all the way around here. On the back end of the heel, they stop about right there. But to make sure I get it marked, so the last hole from the original stitches was right there, and on the opposite side it was right there. Okay, but we got it all sprayed up and everything. I've got everything set up, so we've got a black stitch that's going to be up top here, visible. It's technically going to be covered up. That's kind of what I had already preloaded in there. And then for the bottom thread, which is going to end up being at the top here on the welt where it's visible, it's white. That's what was in there originally. So I've got my knife, because there is a channel blade on here to cut out a channel. I've got it set to nothing. Basically, there's just maybe a tiny little nub of it sticking out, because we don't want to cut deep into the midsole, because the midsole is thin and we don't need this thread sitting inside of a channel, since there's going to be a sole over top of it. So let's go ahead and get started then. Okay, cut that thread there. Come on, I think these scissors are starting to wear out. They've been cutting so much threads for quite some time now. I need to get them a little sharpened up. Yeah, scissor sharpening is a little bit different than knife sharpening usually. I'm not a big fan of sharpening scissors. It's not bad, it's just that these guys are a pain to squeeze under there and really sharpen them. These are cheapo ones, so you can't take them apart. So really makes it a challenge to sharpen these guys. That's the only reason why I hate sharpening them. But otherwise, there's a stitching there from the bottom. And again, there's going to be a crepe right here over top, just to about right here, and then a sole going all the way over top, so all the stitching there is going to be covered up. So this is what's called a top stitch right there, meaning that it doesn't sit inside any kind of channel. And a lot of shoe and boot makers out there, if they use a rubber sole, that's what they do. They do a top stitch. Doesn't matter if it's a $200 shoe or if it's a $1,500 shoe or boot, they do the top stitch on all of them that have a rubber sole. But that's what we have going on right there. I don't know if the camera's really catching it. Lighting here kind of sucks a little bit, but looks pretty good. Got them in all the holes and everything. Just on the very back end here, it looks like right where this this heel ran is, which is that piece that doesn't get stitched through, but it's still there to kind of keep the shape of it and everything. It was just ever so slightly off that hole, but that was about it, just because that was kind of a wonky hole, it looks like. But got it stitched up. Had a fellow cobbler that asked me a little while ago, I think it was like on Instagram or something, how I make it into the original holes on the stitcher. But really the key is, it comes down to, first thing is practice. Obviously many years of stitching on this thing for quite some time. Each machine is a little bit different. Even if you take the exact same machine, model, make, year, everything's the same about it, there's still some minor differences about it. The other thing is that usually beforehand we have scrap pieces of leather we got somewhere that we just run the stitches through to see what the width is. Like this one right here, it's kind of a bad sample, but we were trying to see the different distances between those couple of stitches there, and that's kind of how it's done, to be able to identify what length of stitch we need, the depth also, because we need to be able to adjust for depth to see how far that stitch is going to be sitting, and so on. So it's just kind of fine-tuning the machine, knowing your machine and having a feel for it, and plenty of practice. That's about it. Obviously it's not guaranteed 100% of the time that every single stitch is going to make it into the original hole, because we are stitching this after all upside down, so we can't see what's going on under here. Even if we put a mirror under there, if you're trying to be smart about it and put a mirror under it, that mirror is going to get in the way anyways. So just wanted to point that out. But anyways, gotta go ahead and stitch up this other boot here, and meet you back at the workbench. I'm gonna go ahead and start getting marked up. I usually measure things out to see how things are sitting. We're adding about 1/4 of an inch crepe material for the wedge here, because after all, these did have a heel originally. The person who owns these, she did request to try to make it as low profile as possible, and so we measured it out. I think about 1/4 of an inch, maybe the closest we can get to keeping it low profile. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and get taken care of. Before that though, obviously there is a lubricant in here that has an oil in it, so I got to clean this all off with an acetone first. Then once that's all dry, then I can finally start working on that crepe buildup for the heel wedge and take it from there. So we'll see you back in just a few. All right, everyone. So I kind of jumped the gun and ended up going a little bit further along in the process. Unfortunately, it got really noisy here at the shop and I just was not able to record too much. But so I've got a crepe base right here that was added in. It's kind of just like a wedge to make sure that would build up the heel. Now for these, we did end up going for that low profile look, so it's not quite as high as the original heel base by roughly about 1/8 of an inch on the back end here. And that's kind of by request of the owner of these boots. They wanted as low profile as possible, but we still had to, you know, add something in there, and so that wedge was what we ended up adding in. We've got the sole on here, and now basically at this point it's fairly close, but we still need to trim it up. And because of the type of rubber these are from Vibram, we definitely have to start out with our 24 grit paper and just try to get as close as we can before we actually hit the welt and everything else. So let's go ahead and get started then. Sorry for that little bit of noise there at the end, but so again, we did the 24 grit sandpaper here, and that kind of takes off the bulk of all the edging here. And it'd be great if we could take it straight to the 100 grit, which is much smoother, but unfortunately this rubber, again, it's a little different. It's the city grip, I believe they call it. It's a little bit stickier, in other words. So in order to sand through it, it heats up a lot, and that can deactivate adhesive. So at this point, I'm gonna let this sit and cool off while I do a few other jobs on this machine, and then we're gonna switch over to the other machine and start sanding it out and doing the finishing trimming and everything on it. So see you back in just a minute. All right, everyone, so at this point we're basically done with it. We're just doing a number of things as far as like finishing out the edging. Obviously we got to clean off that gold marker that we used to be able to trace everything out. So first thing, let's go ahead and get rid of that gold there, otherwise it's gonna get in the way. Clean it up nicely. I'll still have to buff it on the machine afterwards. There's a lot of little dust particles, even though I blew it off with the air compressor. Gonna have to make sure I get that off. But before the buffing, we got to make sure we take care of that edging. Now these obviously have a neutral edge, but you always want to still add a finish on it. Otherwise that becomes the potential for water getting into the leather a little bit more than we'd want, and we don't want water in there. So we're going to take the Saphir Seraphim cream, which is just their regular colored cream variety, but this is the colorless one in the neutral. So we're just going to apply that in there and massage it in. The Seraphim cream also has almond oil in it, so it's going to give a little conditioning and love to that welt there. A lot of people always miss the welts, you know, just to give it a little bit of attention every now and then with some conditioning, and this Seraphim cream will be perfect for it. Now, these didn't have, you know, all that much of a smooth finish on them, meaning that the welt, you can see right there, has like this almost like a roughed out finish, and that's actually how they were as well originally. But with this Seraphim cream, we'll at least get it a little bit more evened out. It'll still have that nice roughed out look to it, but a little bit smoother makes it a little bit nicer. That almost rhymed. Okay. All right. There we go. Got that taken care of, so I'm going to go ahead and buff that up here in a minute once it's all dry, and do the same thing to the other boot, and then we'll finish off by conditioning the uppers. And last one, we are going to go ahead and apply a thin wax coat again around the edges to seal it up a little extra. There's waxes in the Seraphim cream, but one extra layer of wax will definitely give a little extra layer of protection. So let me go ahead and take care of the other boot, do the same thing. That rubber is very sticky. It picks up every little piece of dust, so hopefully when they arrive to the owner, they're not all dusty, because they just love picking up all the dust particles. But anyways, before I keep blabbering, let me take care of all this. See you back in a little bit when we are conditioning and doing the edges, and let you check that out while I finish everything out. Alright, so I've got these guys buffed up. Let me just take out these laces. A lot of times I leave these laces in during the repair process, because otherwise we'd have a lot of laces all over the place. And as long as they're not getting in the way, then we shouldn't have any kind of issues. Thankfully, they weren't getting in the way. But now, since I'm doing finishing work, we're going to take them out. So this is one thing that I like to do on edging, and one thing that you could also do for your shoes as well if you like taking care of them yourself. Just use some wax like the Seraphim, or not the Seraphim, the Pate Deluxe. This is the Beauty Cure version. There's also the Medal Dior version. You don't need to use the Medal Dior version, because that one in particular is designed to, it's formulated in such a way to actually provide a patina. So if you're actually trying to get some kind of like custom patina job that you want to have it slowly evolve over a period of time, that's where you go for the Medal Dior stuff. And if you have finer leather, like thinner, this is kind of a tougher, rougher type of leather, so it's not really needed to go to the Medal Dior. So we're going to use the Beauty Cure version. Alright, I forgot where I left off, got interrupted there, but yeah, we'll just use our bare fingers. Don't need too much of a thick coat or anything on there. And just rub it on in. Now obviously if you want to add a little bit of color, you can sometimes. You know, take a little bit of navy blue, light brown, or whatever works for you. Waxes tend to have a more transparent color pigment, so that means it's a little more on the see-through side. Or if you take a colored cream like one of these here, the pigment is much stronger in there, so you'll actually have a little bit of a decent color change. Now the Medal Dior version of these waxes, I did a whole video on it if you want to check that out. It's the Pate Deluxe from the Medal Dior versus the Beauty Cure version, and it talks in more detail about those waxes in particular, so you can definitely check that out if you like. Otherwise, if you'd like to purchase one of these products, you could always go to our website, CobblersPlusCO, and we do have them listed on there as well, both the Medal Dior, Beauty Cure line, or whatever other things you may need, including repairs. We've been updating our website at the time of this recording, little by little, adding more of our products and all of our services. It's a lot of services to try to list. That's kind of the tougher part to actually list. Products are easier because they're already predetermined on everything, where repairs, there could be a lot of variables that can change. So if you go to our website and you see that you want some kind of service done and it's not listed, feel free to send us a message, and we can let you know what's the next steps to take if you want something done that's not listed, or we might be able to make a short custom listing there for you. Go ahead and take out these laces. Also did a video on the Saphira Renovators comparison between them, between the Medal d'Or and the Beauty Cure. Again, as I had mentioned, the Medal d'Or does have some added ingredients, and it's a little more refined, so it works greater on some of those fine leathers, certain exotic leathers, the added lanolin, where this one doesn't have the lanolin. It's not quite as refined, but because this is a bit of a tougher leather here, this one will actually tend to work just a little bit better than the Beauty Cure version, which isn't may sound surprising, but it's actually not too surprising. Sometimes it's better to use a step down from the premium stuff, just because the type of leather you may have or the type of finish you may have. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. At this point we're done. We're just doing some conditioning. Can let the waxes dry nicely around the edges and then buff them up. Condition these uppers, give them some love and attention. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give a thumbs up. YouTube has some form of algorithm where apparently in order for them to share our videos or push us up a little bit higher, if you like it, that helps with the algorithm. I don't know how it all works necessarily. I'm just a cobbler, and I learned how to edit videos just enough to make these videos for you guys. I'm not a professional videographer either. But if you enjoyed the videos, at least considering all that, definitely hit that thumbs up button. Oh, gotta show you a thumbs up. There we go. Give me a thumbs up, and I definitely appreciate it. If you're subscribed, make sure you've got that notification bell icon hit, because you'll be notified every time we have a new video out. A lot of educational videos about the shoes, footwear industry, products and services, and just our recrafting some how-to videos. And if you're not subscribed, be sure to subscribe as well. So at this point, I'm just going to grab our horsehair brush and buff it on up. These are some smaller 4-season horsehair brushes. If you want that brush there for yourself as well, these are phenomenal for the price that they are, especially. It's better than some of the brushes that cost like 3 or 4 times more. Oh. Marcus just went out. But if you want these brushes, they're listed on our site. This is the smaller one. They go 7-inch and 9-inch on these guys. At the time of the recording, we are actually in the process of trying to hunt down a few other brands of brushes that are fairly good price and very well made as well. Saphira does make some as well. We don't stock them at the moment, but at some point I may just have to cave and finally stock them. But there you go. That is how we resole a pair of 1,000 miles. Oh, gotta make sure to reglue that insole there because we took out the nails. By the way, the nails we're not putting back in because of the softer material. Forgot to mention that. Hopefully you stayed tuned to the very end, and I was able to mention that to you. We're gonna glue the insole down. We didn't run nails in because this, again, is a soft material. We force those nails in, there's gonna be problems. Those nails will shift around very easily. But we did nail that heel counter there and the midsole as well with some gripper nails. So this is not coming off, but running the nails in from the inside is going to be a bad idea. So hopefully you stay tuned at least for that part of it. I hope you enjoyed this video. That's how we got the ladies 1,000 mile, for any of you who know. Sorry, I got interrupted when I was trying to look up the model there. But for any of you that are really curious, this is the model number W40310. That is the model number for this one. I know some of you avid enthusiasts of Wolverine 1,000 miles especially always want to know what the model is and everything, but that's what it is. And it's phenomenal. Very nicely made. So, again, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.